All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Amelia Curtis. Welcome to our Disaster Preparedness for Pets Pet Talk this evening. I am the Education Manager at San Diego Humane Society, and I've been working here for the past 10, almost 11 years. And I really enjoy our lecture series. It's been really great to offer it virtually so that we didn't have to discontinue the opportunity to learn about animals and also have other ways for people to learn about bonding with their pets or how to help animals. So this series has been really fun to continue to offer. And going into 2021, we're looking at making it virtual for the rest of that year as well. So stay tuned for fun lectures coming up. So I just wanted to go over some quick events that we have in the near future, if anyone is interested. We have a virtual adoption event coming up tomorrow on our Humane at Home, which is on Facebook Live. So feel free to tune into that. And then we have our Wake Up with Wildlife lecture on Saturday, December 5th. And our Wake Up with Wildlife lectures are a $5 fee to join and listen in, but this should be a really good one. They are going over different case reports from the hospital, so you'll get to hear lots of different stories about animals that have come into our care and really special cases that we've gotten. And then our next pet talk is coming up on December 17th, how to turn your passion for cats into action. And so this is a really great way if you want to engage with community cats in your neighborhood or learn how you can help other neighbors who are helping community cats. It's a really neat opportunity. And then lastly, I wanted to share my other screen here. We have a great promotion coming up this weekend. So the movie The Pack is going to be premiering on Amazon Prime this weekend. And in honor of that, we're going to be waiving our adoption fees for all adult dogs. So just over the weekend, November 21st and 22nd. So I will send a link after today's lecture to share with you where you can find our animals that are available for adoption. So for this evening's lecture, we are recording, so we will send out the recording at the end in addition to the PowerPoint presentation in a PDF format, so you can review it, and if you know someone who happened to miss it, then they can watch it and learn later on and on their own time. You are welcome to have your video on if you want or off, whatever you prefer, and everyone should be able to unmute themselves. If you have trouble with that, please definitely message me in the chat and I can help make sure you get unmuted, or you can also put questions in the chat as we are going along. So feel free to do whatever is easiest for you and whatever you prefer. And then we will go ahead and get started. So we have John Peevler here from our Humane Law Enforcement team, and he is our disaster preparedness expert. So he's going to go over some great tips for you when we are preparing for our pets. So I hope you all enjoy the lecture this evening. Feel free to ask questions throughout the lecture or by turning off your microphone, as I mentioned, or in the chat. So thank you so much and welcome, John.
Yeah, and I see Galaxy S9 has their hand up.
Yeah, I was curious on, this is the first time I've used Zoom, so I'm practicing. What does it mean by start video? If you're sending a copy of it to us, what's the,
that will start your video. It will show us your face.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, we're already recording, and you're welcome to turn your video on.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and there aren't enough of us here, I think, to be too terribly formal. So if you've got questions, any point, by all means, we can take this in any direction you want. I know it's called a lecture, but I'm not going to lecture you very much. So thank you for that intro. As she said, my name's John Peevler. I'm actually the Administrative Lieutenant Emergency Services, so I do all things disaster preparedness, disaster response, and several emergency management type functions for the society. So I cross a lot of, cover a lot of ground. We were talking, I don't know if you heard the small talk at the beginning, we were talking about sort of getting excited about getting into the holidays, even though the holidays this year will look very, very different. It almost feels wrong to focus on disaster preparedness. And yet this is the season where we can sort of stop and think and have a plan for the next disaster season. We know that fire season in California is very cyclical. It's very predictable in its ferocity. So we need to be as prepared as we can. So first, I'm going to go through a little bit of my background. I've had I don't want to say a sordid past, but I've been around a little bit. So first, we'll go into a little bit of ancient history. I guess I'm not that old, but there weren't even cameras back when I started doing things. So my first disaster actually was when I was 13, I think. So I lived in Northwest Florida. My dad was in the Air Force, and we got hit with a hurricane. And I have very strong memories of responding to that as a community member, just helping some elderly people in our community to recover, cutting trees down and clearing property and stuff like that. So it was very, very formative for me. In 2004, I took a job as a military contractor in Kuwait, just after I got out of the service. And I was expecting to just put some money away for school and go back to the US and get my degree and live some other life. That's not what happened. I ended up working with some dogs in the pretty remote western desert of Kuwait. And I ended up with quite a few dogs in my care and not having any idea what to do with them. You have to appreciate that in 2004, not much has changed, but there's not a lot of infrastructure for animal welfare in Kuwait at all. There was nothing at that time. There were no animal shelters. There were only a couple of very poor quality veterinary practices. There's no form of animal control whatsoever. So when you find a dog in need, you kind of have to do the best that you can for them. So I ended up with 18 dogs at one point. And I met a woman who had just started that country's first animal shelter. And so I started taking care of those dogs with her, and started building that shelter with her. And one thing led to another. And we built this animal shelter and animal sanctuary, and ran that for about 10 years. And I married the woman who started the shelter, and she's the senior director for animal welfare at San Diego Humane Society. So we're both employed here. But come up to 2009, and I think we start with humid in Florida, dry in Kuwait, and then 2009 I responded to my first disaster as an animal welfare professional, which was my background. And I have a hard time with the Zoom screen because I can't see my screen anymore. But that background, actually, I chose a photo from that disaster, which was Typhoon Ketsana in Manila in the Philippines. And being the victim of disaster can be very deeply traumatizing and transformative for anybody who goes through that. And so my nature is to go and try to help in a situation like that. So we spent several days actually in these very strange little rafts, floating around the very flooded streets of Manila, trying to deliver aid and vaccines to animals, many of whom were stranded in vehicles, on top of buildings. The people were just as stranded. The water was not projected to go down. The water level was not projected to go down for weeks. So I actually built an elevated walkway through the town. That's just how low down it was. And that's just some of the continuing effects of climate change in a tropical area like that. So that was my first major international disaster. My next was Haiti in 2011, I think was challenges me to think of years, but I think that was the major earthquake that killed over 100,000 people. So that was formative as well. But my next disaster was Japan. We did the typhoon and nuclear meltdown in Fukushima province, which was its own very strange things. It just gave me a lot of different backgrounds. So I've done a lot of storms, earthquake, a lot of water in a lot of the responses that I've done. And then in 2015, my wife and I relocated to Kuwait from Vermont, or sorry, to Vermont from Kuwait, to just have a different environment for our kids more than anything. So I started working as a contractor and private consultant with Humane Society of the United States and Humane Society International, doing a lot of work on the dog meat trade and major cruelty across the United States and major disasters as well. And that brings us to sunny San Diego, which honestly kind of splits the difference between Kuwait and Vermont. It's very, very pretty, not quite as hot as Kuwait, which I've seen up around 140 degrees Fahrenheit. So nice middle ground there. And please, if you have a question at any point, let me know. I don't know, can you see this? Maybe that bottom bar there. There we go. So I'm going to talk about what I run now for the Humane Society, the program that I administer, which is the emergency response team. So in 2018, I took this job to help to align our response infrastructure to the national standards, to allow us to be incredibly proficient and efficient and professional locally, focusing on whatever the local needs are in the cities that we serve, but also throughout our county and our broader community. But as you know, San Diego Humane Society is very committed to improving the welfare of animals anywhere that we possibly can. And so historically, we've gone well beyond our borders to support any time that we can. So the goal of the transition was to make sure that we are what an emergency manager would call interoperable, able to work well with other organizations across the country, because we're meeting the same types of standards that they are. And in fact, we're very much trend setting and setting standards nationally, and particularly at the state level. I sit on a committee with Cal Animals, which is a group of a majority of humane societies and other type entities in the state, as well as on another board that's even harder to explain. But we're coordinating efforts to make sure that organizations throughout California are as prepared as possible, and that we're able to support each other as much as possible, because the size, frequency, complexity of events that are occurring is first of all worsening drastically year over year. We'll see some gap years here and there, but we're consistently seeing worsening disaster conditions and significant fires. And while we need to be able to respond to those well, wherever any agency is, any organization will burn out over time. So it's critical that other organizations are able to step in and to provide support over a longer duration of event. So that's a smidge about what we do. So we do focus heavily on fire response, because that's certainly the most predictable and consistent type of disaster that we have locally. Certainly is not the only. We do see flooding occasionally in the Tijuana River Valley. Earthquake is always a possibility. Our proximity to major Department of Defense infrastructure also creates the ability, or the possibility of technological type events and terrorism type events, man-made disasters, as well as power plants, industrial plants, anything like that. Yes, I would love to know your name, Galaxy S9, so I could not call you that.
Oh, you know what? Like I said, I'm learning that I should have typed my name in there, but I just thought it meant that it was just connecting from my cell phone. That's what I meant. Yeah. My question is the international, because I really do follow the Humane Society, but I was curious, in Spain, they have a lot of those mean hunters and what they do to those animals. And I don't see a Humane Society or any kind of real organization out there, except for a couple of people that run maybe, like rescues. But what do they do about, people like some of these hunters in Spain? Like the way they just treat their dogs, it's sickening. It's like, I know you're not supposed to really, downplay another culture, but it's pretty pathetic how if they don't want their dog, what they do, or if they don't perform what they do. So I'm just trying to speak out for those dogs in Spain as well.
Yeah, so what I would say is that based on pretty broad international experience, that is not a problem exclusive to Spain whatsoever. We see major issues with hunting animals in the United States. I've seen it in many other countries. Many countries have either no laws that protect either dogs or the animals that are being hunted. So while as a brick and mortar shelter, we put the majority of our emphasis into the animals that are in our direct care, but the overall mission of the society is to improve welfare for animals anywhere that we can. Any type of societal development takes a lot of time. And we move that needle slowly but consistently as much as we possibly can. So it's not a problem that's isolated to Spain, but it is something that gets better slowly over time. And we have to appreciate that the animal welfare movement, as we know it, is very new, but in its entirety is circa 1865, right after slavery is abolished. That's the time where the humanitarians among us can start to look at other issues, more issues, I should say, both human welfare and animal welfare. And so in the course of human history, that's an incredibly short span of time, and yet we've made a lot of progress in that amount of time. So we keep pushing, keep fighting, fight the fights that we can fight, and make progress anywhere we can. I certainly do have a lot of international colleagues that I consult with and work with, and I've responded with many as well. So there is good work being done globally, but we have better laws here than the vast majority of countries. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, what is your name so I know what to call you?
Oh, you're talking to me, Lori?
Yes, sorry.
Oh,
What's your name?
Lori.
Lori, okay.
Yeah. But that was a good response. Thank you for that. I just thought since you're also dealing with the meat trade with South Korea and China, that maybe they went to Spain to help out with some of those animals that are turkey.
Yeah, Europe in and of itself is a difficult environment to work in. They're relatively isolationist in their approach, and their welfare standards are quite different. It's very high in some countries and very low in others, but it's very complicated. Very complicated world we live in. But the difference between even when I started my career and where our movement is now is almost night and day. We're making very rapid progress, and really a combination of the work that organizations like ours are doing, but also popular culture. We see more and more in any TV shows, movies, things like that, the positive image that animals have and how part of the family they are, and that moves the needle not just here but abroad as well, because what we produce in Hollywood and whatever is very, very popular. And that's something that I saw real world in Kuwait, people seeing animals as part of a family on TV, and then people wanting to have that for themselves as well. But it's definitely a slow process. All right, so back to emergency response team. So I administer about 160 people across all disciplines of emergency response. And I'll get into what those are in a second. We do focus primarily on fire, both because it's the most prevalent type of disaster in our community, but also because it's an extremely dangerous and difficult environment to work in, and it requires a great deal of training. And the people who do that, like the people in this picture, people who have that level of training are very adaptable to other environments. So if we're training them to this high standard for fire response, gives us a lot of capability elsewhere as well. So we are a nationally aligned response team, which means that we meet the standards set out by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. I don't want to bore you with all the national talk, but alignment is very important. Not only does it mean that when a disaster is declared, we are reimbursable, but it also means that we are meeting and exceeding the standards that have been set forth at the national level. So we have quite a few different unit types. So we are one emergency response team, and we are broken into multiple units by function. So we have a transport unit whose mission is to move animals primarily from behind fire lines to safe shelter. We have a fire unit which focuses on scouting fires, figuring out where it's safe for people to operate, where are animals, finding properties that have animals on them that we've received calls for, and also removing small animals that's sort of lumped in there. Then we have an incident command unit that runs all of our fire response. So they're communicating with multiple agencies across whatever disaster it is, generally across the county, as well as to our Humane Law dispatch. So they're managing all of that flow of information inward and then dispatching units appropriately based on what the needs are. We have a technical rescue unit, which works with animals that are entrapped, and I've got a picture on that in a second. If they've fallen down a ravine or just gotten stuck in the mud or trapped in a trailer or whatever type of thing that is complex enough that it can't be safely, humanely, or even at all done because it's just too complicated of a mission type. That unit also does all of our water rescue, so they are. Let me see if I can admit this person. They're trained in swift water rescue, primarily in floodwater rescue, so either slow or still moving water, or still water, I should say. And that's really to support at a national level. There aren't a lot of flooding events locally, although I mentioned there are some. We have responded to multiple hurricanes. In fact, the picture on the left here is one of our humane officers who responded to Hurricane Florence a couple of years ago, and that was a floodwater response. We also have a large animal sheltering unit, which provides emergency large animal sheltering. We have a companion animal sheltering unit, which provides emergency companion animal sheltering. And then what does that bring us to? Might be all of them. I'd hate to be forgetting one. But we're structured to meet as many needs as we can reasonably conceive of within our resources. So a couple of examples. I do have a couple of videos in a second that we'll go through. But we've done, most recently, we did the Valley Fire, obviously, which was what we would call a full-scale response, where we activated every unit except the technical unit. So we activated all of our fire units, all of our shelter units. We set up with the Red Cross at 2 different sites. We set up for large animals at a total of three functional sites, which was 2 more functional sites than we were really structured to support, but that's what the needs of the event were. So that's what the team did. And we had responders out every day of that fire. And the way a fire response works, first we're doing the most urgent needed missions, going out and finding animals that have been left behind, or people are trapped with their animals, can't get out. And the way fire response works, the fire department determines where it's safe for people to be and not be, and then law enforcement manages that. And so once a road is closed, people can no longer cross that closure. So if you're at work during the day and your road is closed because there's a fire in that area, even if it's not near your house at that moment, it's near enough that the fire department has said it's not safe for you to be there, and it's not safe for them because they need access to all of those areas without having to deal with any traffic. So in that case, like, those are areas where we can still get to because our people are credentialed at the state level effectively, and then they're trained and equipped and everything so that they can go behind those fire lines. So we're able to go and rescue your pet if it got left behind, or there's a very wide variety of missions, but we can go back and we check on animals. And so we're looking at fire behavior and seeing where it's safe to go, where we may need to evacuate animals, or where we may just need to care for animals. Yes, Lori.
Okay, going back to the rescue, like in case of a fire, because I have gone through a few of them. If there was a fire or a major disaster, who do you contact if let's say you're gone and your pet's inside? Because I do have 2 small dogs. So who would I contact to let them know? Say I've got my 2 dogs in there. What do I do?
So it depends on which jurisdiction it is. So if you're in the unincorporated areas of the county, or if the county Office of Emergency Services has taken over an event, then Department of Animal Services is the agency to call. They will receive the information, and then we work jointly with them. So in the instance of the Valley Fire, our dispatchers and our tactical dispatch and our mobile command vehicle were filtering all the information and giving it to either DAS or to our own responders to manage. If it's within one of our cities, which honestly is fairly unlikely for a fire to be isolated to a single one of our cities because of how urban most of our cities are, then it would be us. I don't have the DAS number with me. Our number is our main number, which is I think 619-722. I should know the other 4 numbers. Amelia, what are our other numbers? 7012. I can't remember.
Our number is 619-299-7012. I'll put
7012.
that, and then I'll also put the DAS number in the chat for you guys.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Sorry, my brain does not remember numbers. I write things down. Does that answer your question? So basically, it depends, but that's the case everywhere. It depends on what the lead agency is, and that's based on jurisdictional stuff, which you don't care about during a fire. Have both of those numbers, and then you call whichever one makes sense to you.
Okay, yeah, because I remember one of the fires, they actually, it was over by Rancho San Diego, and they used Cuyamaca as a designated point. And I remember that when I first got my dog, the dogs were not allowed to go into the first aid section. They had to be kept outside, and some lady was coming down stealing the smaller dogs. Thank God I had a police that told me about this and said she would watch it. But you know, sometimes you just never know who you can trust with your pets, you know, like during a disaster, and that really did happen. And so finally I heard that the first aid changed their guidelines, saying they do have to have now a designated point for your pets in the event of a natural disaster.
Yeah, so that's a change post 2005, and then again there were additional changes post 2009, Superstorm Sandy. So basically, Katrina and Sandy both changed things at the national level, where jurisdictions must accommodate pets. It does not mean that pets will be accommodated at every evacuation center. It just means that there must be evacuation centers that take pets. That could be 1 out of 5, it could be 3 out of 10, like whatever mixture works. And part of that is dependent on what the facility owners allow. So some schools will allow pets in some places. We also have a say in whether a particular site is suitable for pets based on weather and things like that. But there will always be something. And the best way to get that information quickly is to monitor Ready San Diego. There's an app for that. There's a website. There's their Twitter account. They will announce every time a shelter is open or closed, and they will always announce where large animals can go and where small animals can go. Alternatively, if you need information, if it's not an emergency, you should contact 211 because all of the emergency lines will be clogged rapidly, and we're always trying to keep those lines clear for the most urgent cases. So the Valley Fire is a good example, obviously recent example of the capabilities of the team. We did rescue a lot of animals, and the way this works, we do those emergency high priority cases first while the fire is burning and actively threatening homes and animals. And then as the fire either moves on or is suppressed or whatever, when we start to transition into caring for animals that are left behind but don't need to evacuate. Which is often the case because those road closures still exist. Maybe they're close to the fire, or they're a major route of access for utility workers or firefighters or whatever. There are a myriad of reasons why roads are kept closed. Doesn't mean that animals were able to get out. When I say animals, a lot of times the animals that end up being left behind are going to be farm type animals, horses or livestock. Chickens, we're often caring for a lot of chickens. Generally, we'll evacuate dogs for you if you can't evacuate dogs, or most people take their dogs with them if that was an option. So generally, if we're doing that shelter, what we call shelter in place, we're talking about livestock type animals. And then after that, we transition into another mission where we help to bring animals home again. So if we evacuated a bunch of horses and chickens and whatever, or even if other people evacuated them and they need assistance getting those animals home, we assist with that. So we really have three phases of a fire response. In fact, the day before the Valley Fire, we were up in San Bernardino County assisting with a cockfighting case. There's a lot of cockfighting still that happens in this region. Actually throughout the United States, really. So we participate in those types of cases as well, both regionally and then also at the national level with organizations like the ASPCA. And that helps to improve the lives of animals, but it also is a great way for us to keep our responders engaged and to get them the training that they need as well. So we really try to do anything that we can. We also sent people up to Monterey County this year to support them with, I want to say, the LNU complex fire, something like that, or so many fires this year. And we also sent a team of, I think we sent 4 people up to Butte County for 10 days to support them. And we also supported Butte County in 2018 for the campfire. So we're making sure that we're meeting all of our needs locally, and we're going anywhere else that we can get to help other organizations. So here's an example of a technical rescue. This is a horse that fell into a pool, obviously. It is not easy to get a horse out of a pool, particularly when it's an in-ground pool. It's not like you can cut the side of the pool out. You've got to get that animal into a harness, and you have to get vertical lift. So you have to be able to lift that animal straight up, and then you have to be able to lean them over onto solid ground again. So that takes quite a bit of equipment to accomplish. And it's relatively dangerous to try to use power equipment because there's so much power in that type of equipment. So we're using ropes and other technical rescue equipment to accomplish that type of operation. But that team trains at least monthly, and is one of the busiest units, not necessarily in terms of missions, but in terms of training. It requires so much training to remain proficient in those types of skills. So I've got a few videos I thought we'd go through just to kind of demonstrate some of our missions. Does anybody have any questions at this point? We're gonna transition through these videos. We'll sort of look at some of the things that the team does, and then we'll transition into personal preparedness, pet preparedness, that type of thing. Any questions at this point?
Nope, not for me.
All right, we'll jump in. None of these is very long. This was a couple of years ago. The Alpha Project, temporary homeless shelter, flooded out.
Well, SDCCU has opened up their doors and they have allowed people to come in. Some of the people have pets. We are here to offer supplies, food, bedding, anything the pet owners need. We're giving them leashes and collars. You know, kind of the basics and the bare minimum for what they need.
So we're contracted with the City of San Diego to provide emergency animal services for disaster events like this one. So we're both required to be there, but as an organization, we really want to be there. So the shelter is intended to be open for about 5 days. So we're going to be there every day, just assessing what the needs are. So this is just an example. Let's see if I can click past the video now. You know, we serve our community in any way that we possibly can. It doesn't matter how big or small the mission is. We do that every single day in helping people that are homeless or at risk of homelessness, that have veterinary needs, animals that are in distress. You know, across the board, that's a daily mission. And then anytime something bigger comes up, we jump into that as well. This is from Hurricane Florence. My PFD is pretty well rigged. I've got my gloves, I've got a green laser and a signal mirror and all that kind of stuff.
We've got 4 fantastic people going that are extremely qualified to do this. It's a very cohesive team that is all equally passionate about rescuing animals and accomplishing our mission.
There's a cat on the chest.
Floodwaters were anywhere between knee and waist deep water. The dogs were in the water.
One of 5 dogs that he's just rescued.
Good boy, Junior.
One of the calls we know is for a potbelly pig, 150 pounds, that the owner's on site but unable to, I guess, get the pig to cooperate.
past the rivers. National Guard are out building all the walls. But yeah, the flood's a lot worse than what I thought. So yesterday was pretty full on.
Carried him back, and then we got in the truck with the AC on, which we normally wouldn't have that luxury. We'd normally be in a boat, but he needed to cool down, so we cooled down together, and then they brought the other puppy in and the other dog.
To rescue 2 bulls and a heifer.
It took us a good part of the day to get them bundled and packaged and then swimming next to the boats. It was very, very complicated for sure to try to get them out.
We're glad we were able to get him out because I don't think they would have survived.
Just grateful for the opportunity, and yeah, worked with a great team, so we're really lucky for that. Watch the part where we come back to the airport. There we go. So that's a couple of examples. This one's really short. It just shows how complex it can be to get all these pieces together, to get everybody trained, and that'll come up more in a second when I talk about personal preparedness. This one's very short. This is, I think, this year.
All right, stand by.
The horse just went down in a mud hole and couldn't get up again.
There we go. We're good.
Here we go, big guy.
He's moving. He's moving.
Come on, big guy.
Keep hauling. Keep hauling.
Come on.
Back there? Yeah. Oh, okay. Okay. Guys, slack. Yeah, I thought it was going to keep you forward.
So it seems pretty simple, but getting a horse up
All right, stand by.
not so easy. It takes an understanding of the horse's anatomy and the right equipment. You need to pull in the right direction at the right time, so you don't make the situation worse. But any questions about any of our response mechanisms, how it's structured? We do recruit regularly. I'd be happy to share the link for an application. The way that it works, you may or may not hear back from an application. We do get a lot of applicants, but we'll consider each one and let you know if we're going to move forward with one.
I do have a question about that because that was one of my main goals, thinking about maybe in my time that I would have a lot of time, and I've already dealt with, like I said, 3 natural disasters. Don't you have to have a lot of coursework, or what are the requirements if you want to get on board, even if it's just little administrative work, helping placement and putting them in stables or whatever, or dogs, or
yeah, it depends. So there's a job description for each role, and there are quite a few different roles. So like in a shelter environment, the 2 key roles, one touches and cares for the animals, and the other does the sort of intake, reunification, the paperwork side of the animal shelter. The one that touches animals requires a lot more training, and because there's a lot of hands-on experience that's required to learn animal behavior. And we're generally talking about animals that are under a lot of stress, so there's a lot of expectation that that be done well. But it really just depends on which role you're interested in getting involved in, how much work that's going to be. Everybody's required to do some FEMA coursework, which is self-guided. It's not terribly hard. It takes some time, but it's a requirement at the federal level, and we require it of all of our members. And then from there, it depends on which role, exactly how much. Most of the sheltering specialties, once you're qualified, there's not much training after that. We do a couple of annual trainings, and then whatever missions might come up. The operational field specialties require a lot of training. Like I said, the technical and water rescue side require very consistent training. So do the fire disciplines, versus the shelter ones. Once you're up to speed, let's say, there's not a lot that needs to happen year to year.
what about intake? I was thinking more for myself, more like intake of animals, like during a disaster.
Yeah, so on the administrative side, it's still basically the FEMA classes, and then enough trainings with us, and that's one that we haven't really codified very strongly. That's actually one that we're talking about at the state level, exactly what everybody in the state is going to require. So I'd say it's subject to some change this year. but it's basically going to be some FEMA classes and then enough training with us to be familiar with the processes that we're using.
So is there going to be a link on this that anybody who wants to get involved, they can?
Yes, somehow. I meant to prepare that beforehand. I can pull it up. But
me, John, and I will put it in the follow-up email if you want. I can share.
Okay, why don't we do that so you don't lose my focus at all, because I have to generate the link from another database. So we'll send it in the follow-up materials to all of the participants. And again, that's you just click through that link. It'll ask you for a lot of information. The key information that we want are your basic contact info, and somewhere near the bottom there's a section that's specific to emergency response team, like what type of skills do you have, and what are your interests. A lot of the other data points are for other volunteers specialties, not emergency related. So those are the key things for us. It looks like a lot of information, but you don't necessarily need all of it. All right, so the key message of this entire lecture really is personal preparedness, because while we talked about the many capabilities and the hard work that the team puts into being able to respond, there are still 160 of us, and just in this county there are some 4 million other people, many of whom have animals, some of whom have thousands of animals, some of whom have one animal. The ratio is not great. And it never will be. There's no version of the world where there are as many firefighters as there are people who may need assistance. We try to balance that and have the largest, most robust team that we have, and that's why personal preparedness is so important. And that really boils down to having a plan for yourself and for your pets that's going to work during a disaster. Being advised of what the major, most likely disaster types are, which we've already talked about. So we know that fire is probably the most prevalent thing, and then you've got to look like where do you live? Is it urban? Is it rural? So what is the risk where you personally live? Recognize that disasters occur whenever they occur. Obviously, fire season gives us some seasonality, but there's no time of day. It's not definitely going to happen when you're not at work and you're home and you're able to grab your pet and your stuff quickly and leave. Most of us hopefully spend more time at home than elsewhere between sleep and regular life stuff, but the odds are still not great that you'll be home during a disaster. So you really have to have a plan that has enough depth that it's going to incorporate either some friends or family members, some kind of plan that will give you the ability to take action even if you're not home. And remember, sometimes road closures come into effect for a variety of different emergency types. Even something as seemingly trivial as a gas leak in a neighborhood can shut down an entire neighborhood for a while, and you may not be able to get home. So have the most detailed plan that you can have. So depending on what kind of pets you have, and I would love to poll the room a little. Lori, I think you said you had, was it 3 dogs, or at least you did then?
Well, I have 2 senior Papillons, and they're
Okay.
like going on 14, but when I purchased them a long time ago, they were just puppies, and we had a real bad smoke inhalation problem, and the fire was getting pretty close. So we were one of them that we were told to go to a designated area. So that's why I'm here, because I want to learn as much as I can in case that happens.
Sure. Anybody else want to share what type of pets you have? Q? I can't see the participant list anymore, but I remember your name.
Yeah, I'm a dog trainer part-time, and I work for the San Diego Unified School District. So we have a lot of, preparedness that we have to do, but I do have dogs boarding with me. And one question that I have is that I always want to try to get my dog parents to be prepared, but just like human, and for animals too, it seems like people are procrastinating. They're always afraid to make lists because they probably think that if they do, there's something bad going to happen. Do you have any suggestion how to motivate people to be ready? Because my family is not, and a lot of dog parents are not,
Well, yes and no. I mean, I could try the fear of God approach where I scare people with the realities of what not prepared. But frankly, if anybody had a really good idea on how to motivate people, it would be much less of a problem for emergency managers. It's a constant battle, and a lot of it just comes down to having the conversations frequently. Unfortunately, and I think the pandemic is probably a pretty good example of this, people have a hard time taking disasters seriously. and taking the types of steps that they need to be safe and things like this. Yes, Carol.
Yes.
Are you muted, Carol?
Yes, I am. I was just asking if there was a way of getting a wish list of the equipment that you need for donations. I'm in Penasquitos, and I work closely with the San Diego Police Foundation. I'm on the board, and also I'm working now with the San Diego Regional Fire Foundation.
Okay.
So I'm you know, I'm a senior now. I just retired, but you know, I could give monetarily. I don't know if I could go through the training, although I'm in good shape. But I want to help out monetarily. And, you know, if you have a wish list, that will help me because I'm connected to the universities, UCSD and SDSU, as well as the community in San Diego. And I could push out a lot of information that you need. So, you know, I can talk to who's ever in charge of the community engagement. But I did rescue our Korean Jindo from the Humane Society. We got her when she was 4 years old.
Yeah, I was on the farm in Korea for the animals that came to here before I was working here. I was on the farm pulling the dogs off. But to back up to your question, so try to do them in order. So we do have an Amazon wish list. We also have a non-published wish list if you want to go that route. And then as far as age, so the senior response team leader, the person who administers and directs the large animal sheltering unit, is 68. My eldest volunteer is 84, I believe. We are not in the least bit ageist, and we have roles for anybody. And physical ability doesn't matter a lot. Obviously, that'll indicate or dictate which type of role you can be in. But if you want to play an active role, I'm sure we have a place for you. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's plenty to go around. So anybody's welcome. That way.
Hi, John. When you're ready for corral, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yes. Basically, just your personal opinion. I have 2 large horses, and I have a riding arena that is basically all sand and might not be the safest, but I have a horse that will not get on a trail. So I guess my preparedness question is, I will just probably stay with my horses if I were to be home, to put them in a riding arena, which is all sand, water is nearby. So that's as close as my plan is. Catching chickens, I probably just have to water them down. If it was fire, I leave it at Ramona. Are there any instructions for people who live in that have horses? Does these Humane Society have kind of steps to take?
Yeah, so I'll go. I'll try to cover the gambit of them. There's quite a few different things that can be done. First of all, like the arena can be safe. I'm not a firefighter and can't really give you the technical recommendation on it. But it really depends on how tall the fuel is and how close it is to your arena. So if you've got trees that are very tall that are relatively close to your arena, then it may not be a safe place to stay, because wind-driven fire will push a tremendous amount of heat in front of it. But if you have relatively short fuel near your arena, then that can be a very different case. So it really depends on exactly what your property looks like. Your local fire safe county or your local CAL FIRE station can come and do a site visit. And this is the time of year to do that when they're not actively engaged in fires. And they can advise you on defensible space. Your fire safe council can also, generally, they can chip brush for you. So if you've cut down brush to make more defensible space, they can shred that for you, and then that mulch is actually a good fire barrier on the ground. One thing we ask neighborhoods like yours to do is to coordinate amongst each other to find the most defensible spaces in your neighborhood. Find local small evacuation centers that work for your neighborhood. So if you've got 10 properties in a half-mile ring or something like that, and one of them has really great defensible space, that might be a good place for everybody to evacuate to in the case of an emergency. And that's something you all can do together for your own preparedness. And it doesn't have to be a massive thing. We've seen really good success in the Elfin Forest neighborhood in particular, which is a very, very high-risk fire area. They've coordinated, they have everybody in a WhatsApp chat group. So they have direct communication with everybody so that during a fire, they can help each other. And helping each other may mean that like you could be on vacation when a fire strikes and somebody needs to come and evacuate your horses, and you've already decided where in your neighborhood that is going to be. Because you don't have to necessarily trailer an animal. You can walk or ride that animal the half mile to the safe place in your neighborhood. In worst cases, it may be that you're going to have to work together to make a place that is safe, because there is none yet. And that's possible too. It could just be an open field that you keep completely clear of brush. There are a variety of options, parking lots, and you know, it really depends on exactly what your neighborhood looks like. But having some neighborhood coordination and communication can really go a long way to building in that resilience, because I already talked about the disparity in numbers of rescuers and numbers of people and animals. It's even worse when it comes to large animals, because with very limited number of trailers and handlers, it's very difficult often to navigate the roads to get to the properties that need the help. And if you're organized enough that we don't have to come support your neighborhood, that's one less group of people that we have to worry about with our scarce resources. Does that answer your question adequately? And it's something that I'm happy to help coordinate. I'm happy to meet with neighborhoods. I mean, right now we do it virtually, but we can talk about what you know, what can be done locally to help organize your community.
Thank you, John. Yes, you answered my question. This is Corel.
Absolutely. All right, so I think we've, and unless anybody else wants to talk about what pets they have, I think it's useful to know like what species we have to work with, at least, because the conversation for small animals, dogs and cats, is quite different than the one we just had about horses, because the needs are quite different.
We do have some dogs and cats that were shared in the chat, just so you know.
Okay, so that still gives us the list of species. I don't even know where. Well, I have Q&A. Zoom is so complicated. All right, I'm getting rid of that. I'm not gonna distract myself with that. Thank you, Amelia. Let me know if anything else pops up. So obviously, small pets are much easier to evacuate than large animals. The number one advice that I'd give for we've talked about this. What are the needs? What are your home? For those small pets, is make sure that you've got everything that they need to leave quickly, and that's not a ton of stuff. If you have an animal that's on medication, that can be one of the key parts, is just making sure you have enough to get you through several days, knowing that if you have a major incident in your neighborhood, that could prevent you from getting to your vet, which can just delay a process of getting your animal the medication that they may need. And there's a lot to be said for like exactly what type of neighborhood that you live in, how at risk are you from fire, so how likely is it that you couldn't get to your vet, where is your vet, that type of thing. But having everything that your pet needs to survive for, let's say, about a week, really, at least a week worth of medication, that gives you time to find another vet, or for your vet to get back online or whatever. Having food and the ability to give water, it doesn't hurt at all to have a few bottles of water in your emergency kit. That keeps for a very long time. Even just a couple of cans of food, something that has a long shelf life, so you don't have to think about it very often. Obviously, changing food is not ideal for a pet, but it's one less thing that you have to worry about, and it makes it easier to prepare for that incident, and you know you have some food with you. The emergency evacuation centers will have pet food, but not everybody goes to those, and so you have to ask yourself, like, are you the type of person that would go to it or would need to go to it based on all of your circumstances, or do you have the ability to go to friends or family? And that's part of this as well. Where are you going to go if you have to evacuate from your home? Do you have a plan for that? But having everything ready, and animal containment can matter as well. Even if you're going to a friend's house, it doesn't mean that your dog will get along with their dog. If you know that information in advance, awesome. If you don't, bring a crate. Bring a crate anyway. And it doesn't hurt ever to have your pet well crate trained. And we can talk about what that looks like if that's helpful to you all. And remember to ask yourself that question: how often are you home? Like, does your plan need to have other people involved in it so that it has a little more depth? And that could be as simple as, well, the next time you have a conversation with your neighbor, just talk to them about where your emergency pet supplies are. Just talk generally about what your plan is, and have that discussion every once in a while to make sure that they're on board with helping you. Or whatever makes sense to your circumstances. It's very individual, but just having that layer of preparedness. Who else knows about your pets? Do they know their names? Do they have relationships with them? Do you have it written somewhere? What their medications are? All those types of things. And then I touched on defensible space, which is just basically the area around your home that won't burn because it's not flammable. The more of that you have, the better. Particularly like the woman from Ramona, defensible space is really key, and that plays into or gets into the details of like how tall trees and bushes are versus how far away from your home they are. CAL FIRE has some great diagrams on that, and they're really the agency that would give you much more detailed and professional advice on that. I'm just here to remind you that defensible space matters. Having an area around your home that helps you defend it. And there's all sorts of stuff you can do to actually harden your home against fire, from the type of roofing materials that you have to eaves. Gutters are a big problem because fires don't just burn along a straight line and then burn up a house and then keep going. Particularly fires in this part of this century, they're largely wind driven. They're frequently creating weather systems in front of themselves because they're pushing so much heat. So many embers are flying. So it's all those really small embers that can be blowing a quarter mile or a half a mile or multiple miles ahead, depending on the size of the conflagration. And those little bits of fire, they can get into any little crack in a home and burn that home. So bigger fires create other fires, and that's why you see these major complex fires of fires burning into each other and just really eating up large swaths of land. Understand the evacuation routes from your house. How many of them are there? Do you have alternate routes? And that again it's key anywhere. Like I live in northern San Marcos. I'm in unincorporated. We're on the edge of very high fire danger area. Inside the edge of it, I should say. So we are in a high fire danger area. If I leave my driveway and turn right, I can escape. And if I leave my driveway and turn left, it's a dead end 3 miles down the road. It's important to know where that road goes, and it's important to know if there are any alternative routes out. I know all the ways to get out by foot because I go running down there all the time, but the roads are closed and there's no way to drive down there, which means that I'm limited to one way out. That's not always the case. Frequently, there's more than one way out. Know what those ways are. All right, we're going to watch this quick video. Just sort of gives a little bit of overview of our Valley Fire response, I think. Yeah, let's try that.
Teams have been hard at work for the last few days, obviously. We do a mix of missions, so we try to get animals out in front of the fire, so animals that are in the warning order areas, we're getting them out, and we're going in with our trailers and everything and pulling those animals out as best we can. Excuse me. It's been a long 4 days for sure. Today our mission is primarily going in and making sure that animals have food and water that are behind the road closures where owners can't get back to their animals. So we're bringing out water and food for those animals. The conditions are favorable right now for firefighting, so that's giving us some relief. That's letting us do those other types of missions like the food and water, and give us a little bit of reprieve from that frontline fire stuff, which is a lot harder in every way.
So you're saying that the roads are closed, people aren't able to go down and feed or give water to their animals that they have, and that's what you guys are doing?
Yeah, anything that's behind road closures, if an owner evacuated, they can't get back right now. So they can call and we'll put them on the list for us to get out and check on their animals and make sure that everybody's okay. We leave some information on the property that they've been fed and watered and when, so that there's some communication if and when the owner can come back. we just want to make sure that all the animals are okay.
And your emergency response team has been going through some extreme conditions. Talk about how you guys are doing and how many people are getting deployed out to the fire today.
Yeah, it's been a week. We were assisting with a cockfighting bust in San Bernardino County on Friday, and then Saturday we got this call. They're hot, they're tired, but they are really, really passionate about what they do. They love animals. They're here to save people's animals and to help people in every way that we possibly can. That's going really well. Their spirit is in it. So we've had, most days we've had 20 to 25 responders behind fire lines in various tasks. It gets harder during the work week, so a lot of our people are volunteers, but we've still got a crew here. We already got a couple of teams out. We've got some mostly doing the food and water mission that we talked about. So they're here, they're ready to work.
And as the fire is continuing, if someone is in need of help, how can they reach out to you guys?
The best way is to get on our website, sdhumane.org/valleyfire. If you have resources you want to contribute, there's information for that. If you need resources, there's information for that as well. The lead agency on this emergency is the Department of Animal Services. So they're taking all of the calls, and then we're providing the mutual aid to respond to them with them. So I wanted to show that, first of all, as a reminder to turn off your radio and silence your phone before you go on live television. And second of all, just to give you an idea of how complex it is, and to go back to, I can't remember whose point it was, that there just aren't enough resources to go around during an incident. So the more prepared you are, the more able you are to get out of harm's way, the more we can focus on the people that just weren't home, weren't able to make a plan, like whatever, when things go south. That's what we're here for. But the more prepared you are, the better off that you're going to be and that your animals are going to be. Just imagine how traumatizing it is for animals to be left behind and then have to get rescued by firefighters. Yes, Lori.
Going back to these fires, because like I said, that's my main concern is the fires, because we get so many of them. And I live in an area where there's a lot of trees and stuff, but we had, like I said, we had the problem with the smoke inhalation. What can you do when you have small dogs and you're forced to hurry up and get out quickly, or you've already been struck by the smoke was so bad, there was soot all over the cars and stuff. And what do you do? How can you treat a dog or when you're dealing with so much smoke inhalation, especially if they're a small dog? What do you do?
I would love to say there's a good answer to that. Keep them indoors for one thing. Don't let them out at all. Even on the way to the car, if they're small enough and you can keep them covered with a blanket, something that's going to help to filter that air. But quickly get them into the car, recirculate the air in the car, and get out. But fortunately, we don't have quite the fuel height and density that Northern California does, where the soot was traveling for many miles. But it's still toxic to breathe for anybody. I think we've all learned a little bit about masks in the last few months. Have masks for yourself once N95s are in supply again, hopefully on the other side of this surge. Have a few of those in your emergency kit as well, and don't forget stuff for you. Have a few emergency meals or something, so that all your needs are met. You don't have to worry about any basics for the first few days of an evacuation. But there's no great answer for when all of the air quality is terrible. Just keep them indoors.
Okay.
That brings us to the questions slide. Any other questions that I can answer? Now I can look at the chat. Yeah, this is really good from Carol. The fire resistant succulents, absolutely. You can landscape very beautifully with plants that just don't burn very well. Yeah, thank you, Carly, for all of that. Anybody else? Any other questions I can answer? Q, do you have any other questions? I'm all yours for anything I can answer.
No, well, thank you. It's very informative. I always just, when I ask you what should I do for my dog parents, I actually put together a first aid kit and thermometer and giving them out for each one of them for the holiday. So that's one way of doing that, just to get them started, Yeah. And I thought that would be nice, and everybody can use a first aid kit and things like that, and some of the things for the dogs.
Yeah, and if you have a group of people, I'm happy to talk to them. I mean, as much as we're all stuck on Zoom, like it does make it easier to talk to community groups. I'm always happy to do a session for any type of community group, however big or small.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask you that, but it looked like you're so busy that if I can get a group of people together, maybe I can just email
Yeah, I
you
mean,
or
it's
something.
nothing to do it to an hour by Zoom or something, and just have a good talk about preparedness and anything dog related. I've been working with dogs a long time.
Great.
Yeah, always happy to. You know, normally we're doing a lot of outreach events, and that's really a key part of our preparedness work is just getting into the community and demonstrating what we do, handing out flyers and just having conversations with people, reminding them of the importance of being prepared. And you know, CAL FIRE and SDG&E take lead roles in those types of events, making sure that people are hearing the message, and that's an obligation that we all share, is to get that message out, because we don't want to have to come and rescue you and your animals. As much as we love doing rescue, we don't want anybody to be in that situation where they need it.
Yeah, I got you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Where's your kennel?
Well, I live in La Jolla and I work part-time. I'm a full-time linguist for the San Diego Unified School District.
Okay.
And I just love dogs, and I started working with dogs when my dog died. And I just got stuck with it. It's just got my passion, and I train dogs well, and I board them. So I have a number of clients, and they're regular clients. But I feel like a lot of them are not ready for emergencies. So I try to do everything I can to remind them, sending them notes and things like that. But I have a feeling that most of them are not ready. So I just thought maybe if I have somebody else speaking like you, I think they will listen more. You know, just like how kids don't listen to parents.
You can see all my police uniform.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John. That's going to be very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that out of 8 billion people in the world, only a tiny minuscule fraction are really prepared. And I've been the victim of disasters so many times. I've been responding to so many that I'm really prepared, but that's an unfair comparison to make for the majority of people. If it's never happened to you throughout your childhood and adult life, then it's hard to believe that it's a reality that can come true. So,
well, I came to this country as a refugee. I'm Vietnamese, so I've been through a lot. And so I'm always prepared. You know, my husband, he's a running coach, and we have some property out in Borrego Springs. And we thought if there's an emergency fire, that we can go out there. And we have
nothing
a plan.
flammable in Borrego.
Yeah, and we plan that if it happens that we don't communicate with each other, we know where to go. We have all that planned, and we have radios and things like that. But not everybody is like we are. And I know how to do in emergencies, what we need to do. If we can't drive, we can ride a bike, or we have a route, things like that.
Right.
So, it's good
that's
to
a
be
good
prepared.
point.
Yeah.
I mentioned my wife is from Kuwait, and she grew up through the invasion, the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in '91. And so her entire extended family and all of the aunts and uncles, everybody who lived through that, they take preparedness really seriously. They never buy one of anything. They always buy in bulk. There's always far more food in the house than anyone could possibly consume, because they were basically prisoners in their houses for months. And the Iraqis just went around and stole whatever they wanted to, and they learned to hoard things. But it's true that when you live through something like that, you're much more apt to be prepared, and just wanting to avoid the discomfort of an incident like that.
Right. When I was growing up, we have places where we can run down to hide from bombs and things like that,
Right.
And so we know what to do right away, and we were trained by our parents. So it's kind of ingrained in us. But when you come to this country, the second generation, they know nothing about it, and they live pretty sheltered. So I guess it's hard for them to imagine.
Yeah, which I mean, it's great that you could live a life without being worried about those things, but we've got to find the middle ground where you're just reasonably ready for what might happen.
Right. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions from anybody?
No, I just put a link in for the person who wanted to know about giving oxygen to small dogs.
Yeah.
There's a link by a veterinarian that says 7 options to provide life-saving oxygen for small animals.
Okay.
Oh, okay. That would have been me. So how do I get my information to you so you know who to send it to? The link and even the email for the recording and.
So that you'll get in an email. I think, Amelia, do you have that information already?
Yeah, so the
Did you
link to
sign
the
up?
oxygen is in the chat. So you just have to click on that in your chat box. You should see that at the
Well,
bottom of your screen in the chat bubble. And then we're
I
going
will
to
say
share
that
all the other links in an email. So everyone who registered for the lecture this evening will get the PDF of the slides, they'll get the recording, and they'll get any other links that we have gathered.
I will say that link is specific to veterinary practice, providing oxygen to veterinary patients. So it's the seven routes with through which to do that. It's not something that you could do at home.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the chat. I'm not seeing the chat section. I see everything else, but I don't see the chat.
There should be a button somewhere that says chat. I don't think I can replicate what your screen looks like.
Yeah, go down to the lower part of your screen so that you can see mute, start video, participants, and then chat. Click on the chat.
It says more on mine. It just says more and it says, oh, chat. I see it. Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
and then you'll get a side window on the right hand side that will provide the chat. And then down below next to the file, there's a 3-button thing where you can save the chat onto your computer.
Okay, and I can even, yeah, I see it.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think I can.
No, I just retired from SDSU and my job was to teach faculty how to teach fully online.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so.
Wow. Yeah, that's something that's
Yeah, and
much
one of the,
needed.
yeah, that's what we had to use Zoom and, you know, there were other video conferencing tools.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that the oxygen, administering oxygen in this way, like you need an oxygen concentrator, and that's something I would speak with your vet about, whether it's appropriate. I don't want to get too deep into veterinary province. A lot of strict rules in California.
That's interesting though. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions from anybody?
Well, thank you very much, John, and thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. Amelia, how are we doing?
Time, Amelia.
I think we're good. Yeah, thank you everyone for attending. So again, I will send out the recording and PDF and all the links. You'll either get that tomorrow, hopefully tomorrow, by the end of the day, so that I can get you that promotion about the free adoptions for dogs this weekend too.
And Amelia, thank you very much for the video and every information you sent about the dog enrichment. And I watched that Zoom again. That was really fun.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you've been coming to our lectures. Yeah, we're working on a good lineup for 2021. We're hoping to have about 2 a month now. So should be lots of fun and good information.
Appreciate all you do.
All right. Well, thank you everybody.
Thank you. It's very good.
Thank you.